The trouble between the United States, Israel, and Iran did not start overnight. The roots of their conflict stretch back decades, shaped by shifting alliances, broken promises, and deep-seated suspicions. Each country has its own story, its own fears, and its own reasons for mistrust. Over the years, small incidents and misunderstandings piled up, creating a powder keg just waiting for a spark. For many years, these three countries have not trusted each other. Diplomatic talks often ended in frustration, with leaders leaving the table more suspicious than before. Military forces watched each other closely, always on alert, ready to respond to any sign of aggression. The borders in the Middle East became lines of tension, patrolled by soldiers who knew that even a small mistake could lead to disaster. The United States and Israel are close friends. Their alliance is built on shared interests, military cooperation, and a long history of supporting each other in times of crisis. They train together, share intelligence, and often speak with one voice on the world stage. This partnership has made them powerful, but it has also made their enemies more determined. Iran is their main rival in the Middle East. For years, Iran has challenged US and Israeli influence in the region, supporting groups and causes that oppose them. Many fights have happened in the past, but they did not lead to a bigger war. Until now. Skirmishes flared up along borders, and proxy battles were fought in neighboring countries, but somehow, a full-scale war was always avoided, until the situation changed. The reason for the latest fighting is simple, at least on the surface. All sides felt threatened. Iran is working on its nuclear program, a project that has worried the world for years. The United States and Israel believe this is dangerous, fearing that Iran could soon have the power to build a nuclear bomb. They see this as a direct threat to their safety and to the stability of the entire region. They think Iran could build a nuclear bomb. Iran, on the other hand, insists it only wants nuclear power for peaceful purposes, like energy and medicine. But nobody trusts the other side. Years of secret meetings, hidden facilities, and broken agreements have made trust impossible. Small fights grew bigger, and every new incident added fuel to the fire. Protests erupted in the streets, and the world watched nervously as the situation got worse. In 2026, after months of angry words and warnings, everything exploded into action. Each country sent soldiers and weapons to the region. Convoys rolled through the desert, warships sailed toward the Persian Gulf, and fighter jets lined up on runways, ready for takeoff. The world held its breath, hoping that cooler heads would prevail, but the momentum toward war was unstoppable. Planes and ships waited, and everyone was scared that something bad would happen. The tension was felt everywhere, from the highest levels of government to ordinary people watching the news at home. Sadly, it did. A single incident, a miscalculation, or perhaps a deliberate act, set off a chain reaction that no one could stop. The world watched as leaders spoke on TV. They blamed each other, each side insisting that they were only defending themselves. They said they wanted peace, but their armies got ready for war. Press conferences and speeches filled the airwaves, but behind the scenes, generals and commanders prepared for the worst. People in Iran, Israel, and nearby countries worried about what might happen next. Families gathered around televisions, hoping for good news, but fearing the worst. Streets emptied at night as people stayed indoors, uncertain and afraid. The world was on edge, waiting to see what the next day would bring, knowing that the road to war had finally reached its end, and a new, more dangerous chapter was about to begin. The fighting began with a sudden and overwhelming storm of airstrikes, shattering the calm of the night. The sky was filled with the roar of engines and the distant thunder of explosions as fighter jets streaked overhead, dropping their deadly payloads with precision. It was a coordinated assault, designed to catch the enemy off guard and cripple their defenses before they could respond. US and Israeli warplanes worked together, targeting key locations deep inside Iran. Their bombs fell on important military installations, communication hubs, and infrastructure believed to be vital to Iran's defense. The attacks were relentless, with wave after wave of aircraft launching missiles and bombs, leaving trails of fire and destruction in their wake. These targets were not chosen at random. Intelligence reports suggested they were military bases and secret centers for nuclear research and development. The goal was clear: to weaken Iran's ability to fight back and to send a message that their most guarded facilities were vulnerable. The aftermath showed smoldering ruins where once there had been heavily fortified compounds. The explosions were deafening, echoing across cities and lighting up the night sky with flashes of orange and red. Air raid sirens wailed in the darkness, warning civilians to take cover. In city after city, people scrambled for safety, rushing to bomb shelters or huddling in basements, their faces lit by the flickering glow of distant fires. But Iran was not silent or defenseless. Almost immediately after the first bombs fell, Iranian forces retaliated. They launched a barrage of missiles into the night, aiming at American and Israeli military positions across the region. The sky became a battleground, streaked with the trails of rockets and the flashes of anti-aircraft fire. Some of these missiles found their targets, striking military bases and causing significant damage. Others landed in Israeli cities, igniting fires and spreading panic among the population. Both soldiers and civilians were caught in the chaos, fleeing burning buildings and searching desperately for shelter as explosions rocked the streets. The attacks took a heavy toll. There were many casualties on both sides, with soldiers and civilians losing their lives. Some of the missiles and bombs struck dangerously close to residential neighborhoods, damaging homes, schools, and hospitals. Emergency responders worked through the night, searching for survivors and tending to the wounded amid the rubble. For ordinary people, the war brought terror and confusion. Families were jolted awake by the sounds of explosions and sirens, forced to grab whatever they could carry and flee into the darkness. Many spent the night in crowded bomb shelters, comforting frightened children and hoping for the attacks to end. Others tried to escape the cities altogether, joining long lines of cars heading for safer areas. By the end of the first day, the world was watching in shock. News channels broadcast images of burning skylines and desperate civilians, while headlines around the globe warned of a rapidly escalating conflict. It was clear to everyone that this was not just another brief skirmish. It was the beginning of a real war, one that threatened to spiral out of control with each passing hour. In the middle of all the chaos, as sirens wailed and the city was plunged into darkness, people scrambled for safety. The air was thick with fear and confusion, and no one knew what would happen next. Amidst this turmoil, the United States suffered a devastating blow. One of its warplanes was lost in action. The sight of the burning wreckage sent shockwaves through both military ranks and the public. This wasn't just any aircraft, it was one of America's most advanced fighter jets, a symbol of cutting-edge technology and military might. Its loss was not only a tactical setback, but also a blow to national pride. The jet had been flying a high-stakes mission over Iranian territory when, without warning, it was targeted by a surface-to-air missile. The missile streaked through the night sky, locking onto its target with deadly precision. The pilot, a highly trained and experienced officer, fought desperately to regain control. He tried every maneuver he knew, but the damage was too severe. In a final act of bravery, he attempted to save the aircraft, but it was hopeless. Moments later, the jet crashed in a massive ball of fire, lighting up the night sky. The explosion could be seen for miles, a grim reminder of the dangers of war. News of the loss spread quickly. For America, it was a moment of collective shock and disbelief. Soldiers and civilians alike struggled to process what had happened. Television screens across the country showed images of the burning wreckage. News anchors spoke in somber tones, and the nation watched in stunned silence as the story unfolded. The U.S. military moved swiftly to confirm the incident. At a press briefing, officials acknowledged the loss and promised a full investigation. The Pentagon released a statement expressing deep regret and honoring the fallen pilot. Tragically, it was soon confirmed that the pilot did not survive. Tributes poured in from across the country, and the military community mourned the loss of one of their own. The flag-draped coffin became a symbol of sacrifice and sorrow. This marked the first time in many years that a U.S. jet had been shot down in combat. For many, it brought back memories of past conflicts and the risks faced by those who serve. Across the nation, Americans watched the news in disbelief. Some gathered in silence. Others openly wept. The loss touched families, friends, and strangers alike, uniting them in grief and concern. In the days that followed, people began to ask difficult questions. Was the U.S. truly prepared for this kind of conflict? Could more planes be lost? Debates erupted in town halls and on social media as citizens demanded answers and accountability. For military families, the anxiety was overwhelming. Every news update brought fresh worry for loved ones serving overseas. Parents, spouses, and children clung to each other, hoping for good news but fearing the worst. Meanwhile, in Iran, the mood was very different. Iranian soldiers celebrated near the wreckage, and crowds filled the streets, waving flags and chanting slogans. For them, shooting down the U.S. plane was a moment of triumph. The Iranian government wasted no time broadcasting images of the downed jet on state television. News anchors declared it a victory, and officials praised their military's strength and resolve. In Tehran, officials gave fiery speeches, claiming the event proved Iran could stand up to even the most powerful adversaries. The crowds cheered, their confidence bolstered by the dramatic turn of events. But beneath the celebrations and the mourning, one thing was clear to everyone. The war had entered a new, more dangerous phase. The loss of the jet was a stark reminder that the conflict was now very real, and the risks for both sides had never been higher. The attacks did not stop with the downed plane. U.S. military bases in the region came under heavy fire. Iranian missiles rained down on American soldiers. Bases in Iraq, Syria, and even as far as the Persian Gulf were hit. Sirens blared, and soldiers rushed to bunkers. Some missiles got through. They smashed into buildings, setting off explosions. Barracks and warehouses burned. Medical teams ran to help the wounded. Reports said that at least 4 American soldiers died that day. Many more were hurt. The wounded were rushed to hospitals, some by helicopter. The damage was not just physical, the attacks also shook the soldiers' morale. People wondered if the bases were safe anymore. Some soldiers sent messages home, telling their families not to worry, but the fear was real, and everyone was on edge. The U.S. promised to fight back harder, but for the families of the dead and wounded, nothing could make up for their loss. The pain of war was now impossible to ignore. Iran's response was not just about firing back. The country called its allies to help. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon launched their own attacks on Israel. Rockets and missiles flew across borders. Cities in Israel came under fire, and people ran for shelter. Other countries in the region watched in fear. Some worried that their own cities might be hit next. The war was starting to spread. People in Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon felt the tension. Even countries far away, like Saudi Arabia and Turkey, began to worry about being drawn in. The fighting made everyone afraid. News channels showed people hiding underground, schools closed, shops and businesses shut down. The air was filled with fear, and people did not know what would happen next. This was not just a war between armies. It was now a conflict that touched everyone, everywhere in the region. In Iran, the war made life much harder. Many people lost their homes in the bombings. Hospitals in big cities like Tehran were damaged. Some had to be closed or moved. Doctors and nurses worked day and night to help the injured. Food became harder to find. Stores ran out of bread, rice, and water. Some roads were blocked by fallen buildings or closed by the army. People waited in long lines, just hoping to get help. Children cried, afraid of the loud noises and the dark. Hospitals were not safe either. Some were hit by blasts. Patients had to be moved quickly. The World Health Organization called for help, but it was hard to get supplies through. Many sick and wounded people did not get the care they needed. For regular people, every day was a struggle. They just wanted peace and a chance to live without fear. The war also hit Iran's leaders. News came that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's highest leader, was killed in an airstrike. This shocked the country. Many people cried in the streets. Others were angry and called for revenge. Without a strong leader, Iran's government was in chaos. Some leaders tried to take charge, but many disagreed on what to do next. Protests broke out in several cities. People wanted answers. Some blamed the government for not stopping the war. Others still wanted to keep fighting. In the United States and Israel, leaders met in secret rooms. They worried about Iran's next move. They knew that killing a leader could make things worse, not better. Everyone on all sides felt the pressure. The war changed politics fast. Old plans were thrown away. New leaders and new ideas fought for control. No one knew who would win. One reason this war is so dangerous is Iran's nuclear program. Iran says it needs nuclear power for energy. The United States and Israel do not believe them. They fear Iran could build a nuclear bomb and use it in the war. Airstrikes hit some places where Iran works on its nuclear projects. Iran said these attacks proved that the United States and Israel wanted to destroy their country. Other countries, like Russia and China, watched closely and warned against more attacks. The United Nations tried to help. Diplomats called for talks and a stop to the fighting. But in the middle of war, it was hard to get anyone to listen. The risk of nuclear trouble made everything more serious. People worried that if things got worse, someone might use a terrible weapon. This fear hung over everyone like a dark cloud. Now, no one knows what will happen next. Some people hope the fighting will stop soon. They want leaders to talk and find peace. Others fear the war will get bigger and more deadly. Soldiers on all sides are tired. Families mourn their loved ones. Regular people in Iran, Israel, and nearby countries just want to feel safe again. The world hopes for a deal, but trust is broken. Some leaders talk about regime change in Iran. Others say it is too risky. Everyone is worried about what the next day will bring. The only thing that is certain is that the war has changed everything. For now, the world waits and watches, hoping for peace but fearing more pain.